I got this interesting one off Motorcycle News that just popped up the other day. I don't think many people covered it, but it was a new finance deal from Ducati, specifically on the Scrambler. Let's talk about that for starters. Why would they be doing a finance deal just on the Scrambler? Do you reckon they're not selling that well since they updated it? We rode all three.
Yeah.
And I thought they were pretty good and a good continuation of the previous gen Scramblers. So it was the full throttle, the night shift, the Icon. But yeah, it sort of seems like they're trying to get people in the door to consider them. But I mean, I thought they were good, didn't you?
Yeah, I think they're really good. It doesn't always translate, I suppose, in terms of sales. I think that would be my assumption as well, right? If they're doing a deal like this, maybe it's because they're not shifting as quickly as they would want them to. Maybe also because Scrambler is a sub-brand, right? So it's like its own specific little pocket of Ducati. So maybe they're kind of run slightly differently, I don't know. But interesting.
Yes, that is true. Maybe someone else makes up the pricing strategy and that's why it's specifically for them. But yeah, it's surprised if it's not going particularly well because you owned the previous gen, wasn't it, pretty much, of the Icon? Yeah. And I think when you went and did the press trip, you said you felt like it was quite a good evolution or improvement, but with pretty much the same fundamental feel and soul.
Yeah, and I stand by that. The biggest update was that it was ride-by-wire and it was smoother on the throttle, really. Then it felt more modern, more refined, because the other one did feel a little bit raw, I suppose, and some people really like that. If you're riding for city stuff and shorter trips, that actually is more of a frustration than if you were doing, longer stuff or more dynamic stuff where really you can just pin it. So it definitely felt better to me. But I have to admit, I haven't seen an awful lot of them on the roads, if that's any kind of indication anecdotally, but do see a lot of other competitors, such as, I don't know what I'd put in there really, Royal Enfield, Honda, Yamaha.
Triumphs.
Yeah, fair amount of them.
Bonnies?
Yeah, mostly it would be their heritage, yeah, for sure.
Well, the finance deal that I'm talking about anyway, and we're all familiar with paying cash, one hopes, and PCP, where you sort of pay in installments, and then usually there's a balloon payment at the end, and you decide whether to pay it or not. This one is a 50-50 deal, so you pay 50% of the price of the bike up front. So the Icon, I believe, is 9,995. So you got to walk into the dealer with $5,000. They give you the brand new Icon, interest free. Then no monthlies or anything. You can go back to the dealer 2 years later and decide whether to pay the rest of it, and that will obviously give you the bike. So another $5,000, or give the keys back. And then it says, and move on to another brand new model. So I assume you use that deposit that you put down, the first half of the value of the bike, to put down as a deposit on another bike or something. And then you have to give the bike back and they just sell it on. But basically what you're kind of faced with is that a good deal? Like, would you rather not just put a $1,000 or $2,000 deposit and pay monthlies in a traditional PCP? Like, how is this? And well, actually, I know how this is more enticing. It's zero interest. So when you pay at the end, there's been no interest building up over 2 years.
Yeah.
But does it sound like the sort of thing that would make you think, gosh, you've got to rush down there and put $5,000 down on a new Scrambler?
It sounds a little too complicated to me, to be honest. Like PCP, the reason that does so well is because it sounds so simple. And that's how they kind of net you in. And then obviously once you're in that ecosystem, it's never ever, isn't it? It's like you never own the bike, but you sort of in 3 years' time
just
they
keep using it as a deposit for the next
exactly
one.
For the next bike, and you've always got something fresh. But I know a few people who've done that, and one or two of them kind of regret it and would prefer to have just bought a bike. So it sounds a little weirdly sort of higher risk in my head, but I guess not. I don't know. Tricky to tell that one. How about you?
It's funny that you say that it's too complicated, because in a way it's simple. Zero interest, $5,000 now, and then in 2 years, $5,000. But PCP, you got to be thinking about residual values and all that kind of thing, and like how much deposit do you put down, and therefore how does that affect your monthlies, and how long are you going to run the deal for as well? And again, that's going to affect your monthlies, but also how much interest accrues. Way more complicated in many ways, but ultimately I think what you're saying is it comes down to that simple idea of how much am I paying each month for this bike, basically. You're kind of like renting it.
Yeah, it's more like renting, exactly.
I'm not sure it sounds that tempting. The reason that I don't think it sounds that tempting is because I think after owning a bike for 2 years, maybe with a PCP, if you've got a couple of grand, 2, 3, 4 grand, it depends on how much of it you're paying off. it might be tempting just to buy it and keep it for another year or sell it on or whatever. But to have stumped up $5,000 in the first place, and then 2 years down the line, when the honeymoon period with the bike is well and truly over, to then give another $5,000 cash.
Yeah.
Especially the rate at which you change bikes, mate.
Yeah. Also, considering that it will have depreciated because you are the first buyer, and that's the biggest kind of loss, if you like, on any vehicle is once you've rolled it off the forecourt, right? So you're going to give $5,000, but you're definitely not going to get that back in terms of the resale on it. And fair enough, if you've been sensible enough to go, I'm going to squirrel away a little bit every single month, and I'm going to set up my own little savings account, and then that'll pay off my bike in 2 years' time. No one's going to do that. I mean, if you're sensible and you did, then great, you've got something with 0% interest on it. But I just don't see most people doing that, to be honest.